We holding on Vav Amud Aleph, Samach Lekei Slacher, 6a. Was the last thing that you learned that whoever says that he didn't borrow, it's as if he made a statement that he didn't pay it either? Naftali, do you have the place where? Naftali, do you have the place where we left off yesterday?
Yeah, just a minute, please.
Okay, Dr. Stein, the teaching yesterday.
No problem. I'll give you the answer now, but when I give a share, I don't necessarily hear what I'm saying, so I don't remember the answer.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the page by Samach Lokoto.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Thank Hashem that they're able to learn Torah every day. It's chus of learning. We should have Beis Hamikdash. Learning Lili Nishmas, have a Golda Basparach Ben Yamin and the son of Seb Ben Zion. And for Shlema, for Avram David Ben Sarah. You've seen the professor lately. And Gedalia Yetzal Eliezer Ben Feget Zipara. Okay. Okay, the Mishnah that we learned said that someone builds a wall higher than 4 cubits between the two properties. So he can't make his friend pay for what's above the 4 cubits because his obligation is only up until the 4 cubits. He said that if the friend then goes, the guy that doesn't want to pay, and builds a wall opposite the wall that's above 4 cubits, and he builds another wall like that tall, so then he becomes obligated to pay for it, because he's demonstrating that he's satisfied with the height of the wall. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, exactly right there. Yeah, we're above the comma. This comes in above the comma. Okay. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Samach lepalga, samach lekula. If the corresponding wall that this, let's put some names to this. Ruvain built the wall, and Shimon doesn't want to pay for it because it's higher than what he's obligated to pay for. So now Shimon builds a wall that's corresponding to the wall that Reuven wants him to pay for. So even if samach lepalga, samach lekula, even if he only builds the wall not along the full length of the wall, was it partially, but it would be the same height. Or if he builds it not to the same height, but along the whole wall. So we're assuming now that he's going to continue building it and finish it off later, and he's responsible for everything. To split the price of the original wall that he was denying, he was refusing to pay. That's the opinion of Rav Huna. No, it's only the amount that he built corresponding to the original wall that he obligates himself. We don't assume that he's going to finish the wall. That's what he built in. Okay, so you're accepting that you're satisfied with the height of this section of the wall. Rav Huna says, but carnival. Rav Huna would agree, but carnival lufta. Okay, now I don't know exactly the picture of this, but I assume that what's happening is I have the wall that was built. It's going like this. I have the house that belonged to let's say to Shimon was right here. So the wall sort of goes into reaches the corner of his house. And when Shimon builds a wall right over here, that means like he's sectioning off a corner of that area, maybe for storage or whatever. So he's not appreciating the whole wall. He's only appreciating the back end of the wall, which he's using to be to section off. He wants to store wood there or something. I don't know.
The diagram that I saw showed he built a short wall parallel to the longer wall, even before he put a teak or beams upon it.
So that would be a machlekes Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. Now, what we're saying is that Rav Huna would agree that he doesn't have to pay for the whole wall. That diagram would say that, well, maybe he's not finished building, and maybe this, and that's a machlekes. But over here, Rav Huna agrees that we assume that he is finished building, because you don't build further. Once you've sectioned that part off, that's as much as you're going to build. So Rav Huna agrees to Rav Nachman that you only have to pay partial wall, split half the wall. You split half the wall on half the wall. Okay. Rav Nachman would agree. Ba'friza ubekasa kavasa de kashuri. Yeah, but who's putting up this beam? He made it obvious that he's going to continue building. He's putting these beams that are going to show that he's going to build higher. So Rav Nachman would agree that he's just obligated himself to split the original wall.
I had a question.
Yeah.
His neighbor did. You have to just make 3 sides and just use this side as his fence.
This wall there obligated to split anyway.
Oh, okay.
So he has to pay for the construction of that wall.
For just this one,
Yeah.
even before we Okay.
Yeah, if it would be a courtyard. It would be,
yeah, his own courtyard,
if it would be a field where he doesn't have to put up a fence, then he could say, I'm not paying for that fence, that's your own thing. And then when he would build this one, then the guy would say, see, you do want it. And then he would make the pay.
But in no instance, because sometimes I see fences where they have 2 just parallel right next to each other. I think it's just for aesthetics.
I'm not sure. The Gemara, I mean, the Gemara is talking about where the guy is putting up not just the fence, he's putting up a wall. He's trying to get the other guy to pay for half of it. Yeah. So Amar Rav Huna says Beikavi Leihavi Chazaka. Okay, now we enter into a new discussion over here. This is not this doesn't have to do with payments. This has to do with who has the rights to use certain parts. And this really comes out to apartment buildings where people keep their things in different areas, and they say, "What I mean, I've always been keeping my stuff there." Or let's say outside in the hallway of the apartment building, you want to hang stuff. You want to hang pictures of your family outside by your door. on the door, you always put up signs, welcome or whatever, Beis Chabad. But can you start hanging things along the way? So here, this is talking about what happens over here. Shimon, Rashi says, he makes a tall wall in the courtyard, and he puts windows there. Well, the windows are meant for to put beams in. So in other words, he already set up when he built it. He already set it up for Reuven to use. I switched the names on me, but the first guy that built it, he set it up he built the wall in a way that it would be easy for the other neighbor to use that to use the wall. He already put grooves in it for the other neighbor to put his beams on so that he can build on it and all of that. So then, Leihavi chazaka. That's not considered a chazaka that he should be able to say that, what do you mean? I must have already paid for it, because or else how would you have, why would you have built it perfect for me with, everything in place? And even if he made for him, the himlati is like some wood that goes around the hole, that to protect the wood, the beams that the neighbor's about to put in. Damarle, what's the reason for this? Why it's not considered a chazaka that they already paid? Damarle, Amina, I said, when you're ready to pay for it, I don't want you, when you're going to build a wall corresponding to it, which of course I think that you're going to want this wall. You're going to build that corresponding wall. You're going to start to drill holes in the wall that I built. I don't want you drilling those holes. You're going to ruin the wall. So I built it already in a way that the holes should be there and it should be set up for you to do this. But that doesn't mean that you've already paid me for it. I had in mind in construction. Yeah, that's it. Amar Rav Nachman, achzik lahardi leachzik lekashuri. If the neighbor allowed you to put up thin beams on top of his wall, that does not mean that he allows you to put up heavy beams. Lekashuri leachzik lahardi. If he allows you to put up if he allowed you to put up heavy beams, then you can put up other beams as well, thin beams as well. Rav Yisrael achzik lahardi achzik lekashuri says no. Once you can put up the light beams, you can also put up the other beam. Now here, we're not talking about payments for the wall. Here we're talking about, does the person allow you to use his wall for these things? And you can say that, look, I bought the rights from you. He says, I bought the rights from you to use for the usage of what I want to do in the courtyard, or what I want to do. I paid you for that. We've agreed to this. And later on, the guy can't come and say that, 1 second, get rid of your stuff. Says, well, somehow he said, look, you have a wall. See, really, it would work like this. You have a little shed or something in the courtyard. Say, can I keep my bike in there so it doesn't get ruined? So just so much more convenient. And you say yes. And then afterwards you say, get your bike out of here. Just 1 second, we agreed that I could do this. So could be I even paid you for that. So if we've made this up with like some sort of contract, something like that. So we're talking about afterwards, we're having this argument, and I say we have this arrangement. I paid you to keep my things in. So here he's talking about the usage of the wall, where he's saying that 1 second, you allowed me to do this. Can't take it away now.
It's like an easement also. Sometimes an easement is not paid, but it's just, you didn't protest, so now it becomes acquired in a way.
Yeah, now, Rashi says that if you don't have an actual arrangement, you're just saying that you never said anything, that's not enough. That's not enough. You have to actually have a claim together with it that we made an arrangement. But else it's like a chazaka sheni mataina. You have to have a claim that why together with it. It's not just I always used it. That's not enough. No. Ikadamri, Amr Rav Nachman, there are those that say it different. Achzik lahardi, achzik l'kashuri, that Rav Nachman says that if you have been using it for the small beams, you have the rights for the big beams. L'kashuri, achzik lahardi, and the same thing would apply for the big beams, of course, that you can use it for the small beams. Amr Rav Nachman, achzik l'natvi, achzik l'shafvi. This is talking about allowing your rainwater to drip into your friend's property, because you don't have the gutter of your house is maybe the roof is like extending over his wall. There's like a little overhang. So if it was originally just dripping, and now you wanted to put up, it was always dripping now you put up a gutter so it all goes into one spot instead of along the whole wall. So then that's acceptable, because now you're actually improving the situation. But if you used to have a gutter up where all the rain would all drip into one corner of the place, now you took down the gutter, and now you want just to drip along the whole wall, says that you don't have a chazaka for it. That's what Rav Nachman says. Rav Yosef says no. He says that you can take down the gutter and let it drip along the whole wall. Ikadami, because he had the rights to let it all pour in one spot. Rav Yosef Trifa de Orvani is a hut that's made out of willows, and apparently there would be a lot more rain dripping down from such a hut than it would be others. Other ones I think maybe would absorb some of the rain. Some other roofs would absorb some of the rain. Anyway, he's saying that just because you had the rights to let the rain drip off a certain type of roof, but it doesn't mean you have the rights for it to drip off a trifa d'orvani, this type of roof, because this would be much more rain, and it would be more uncomfortable. Okay, and Rabbi Yosef actually, Rabbi Yosef actually paskin that someone was allowed to put up a trifa d'orvani, this type of roof, and then it would drip into his friend's property. Rav Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Baravua, which is his father-in-law, if someone rents a house from his friend, we're talking about an apartment here, Bebira Gedela, in a large house, so it's like an apartment complex. He's allowed to use outside the doorway of his house in the hallway. He's allowed to use the beams and the walls up to 4 cubits from his door. What was the cloak?
And I remember that said that maybe that was the way that became rich.
Yeah, we were discussing that. Where did that come in? That wasn't here. That was in and then the Bab Metzia. Maybe.
I remember because of that, because once you read the story, you're like, oh, maybe this is wrong.
Yeah, but over there he was poor.
Yeah, he was complaining to Leo Navi that making living was difficult.
Right.
And then he spread like the 12,000 dinars he got among his son-in-laws. Oh yeah. And then I think he said, oh, maybe this is how this person became.
Could be. So yeah. Let's say you're on the roof. So then you're allowed to use the thickness of the wall. They used to have walls that were thicker than today, not just walls. Like the wall of China, you could walk on the wall, drive cars along it. Do they have cars on the wall? No. Yeah, but it's like a path. You could walk on.
Inside it's just dirt, right?
Yeah. Used to think that all the people that were building it are all buried in the wall. That's what then I think they said that it's not true. Yeah. So you're allowed to use the thickness of the wall. The Makam Shinago, if that's the custom. Let's say there's a decorative garden in the front of the house, just because you're renting a room in that apartment in that apartment complex, does not mean that you have the rights to that garden. Start keeping your stuff in the garden. Rav Nachman Didei Amar Fila B'tar B'tzapani, no, you have the rights to that garden. But the area that's behind the house, that's a different story, that you don't have the rights to. Rava says that you even have the rights outside in the back to use that area as well. Interesting. Amar Ravina. Here we're talking about a sukkah, or beams of a sukkah. But it's not a sukkah that was set up for the sukkahs. It's just talking about a sukkah that's made for shade. And you've set up these beams, and they're there for, if it's under 30 days, then there's no proof that the person allowed you to use it. If it's after 30 days, then we say, oh, he can claim that he has an arrangement here that he's allowed to keep those beams up. V'i sukkah the mitzvah, and if it's a sukkah because of sukkahs, and then ad shiva yamin le'avi chazaka, bas shiva yamin avi chazaka. Once it's more than 7 days, then there's a chazaka. V'chabri betina la'altar b'chazaka. Now, if he's chabri betina, if he puts it up with cement, then immediately there's going to be a chazaka. And what would happen for sukkahs is that people, because they had to use it every year, people possibly would set it up, set the beams up that they should be permanent, and then they just put up the schach for sukkahs.
You see that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here, this guy wants to keep the beams up the whole time. So if he's putting the beams up with cement, and the guy's the owner's there to see, then he's able to say, "What do you mean? You saw me putting it up? We had this arrangement." Yeah.
It's the best kind of stuff. I knew someone, his house went around like this, covered all 3 walls. He had beams in between. You just could stop them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, now we're going back to Hezekiah. You have 2 houses, one across the street from the other. We're talking about that you can look across the street and you can see onto your neighbor's roof what he's doing. And this is Hezekiah. So usually when we talk about a courtyard, you build a fence in the center and you split the property, and you split the area of the wall, and you also split the expense of the wall. But over here, because it's across the street, you can't build one wall for both of them. So if they're both going to build a wall, that's not necessary. If one of them is going to build a wall, then it's not fair that he's going to build the whole wall. The other guy's not going to do anything. So what they do is each one builds a wall, and they overlap a little bit. Yeah, they'll overlap a little bit. That way, each one is doing half of his part to stop the Hezekiah. The Gemara asks, why is this only in a Rishus Rabim where we say this, that there's a street that's going through it, even if it would be a Rishus Yachid in between? It should be the same thing, that they should have to build a wall. Gemara says, you're right. But Rishus Rabim Tzrichale. But it's necessary to say this halacha by Rishus Rabim, because Ma'od Tema Nemalei Seif Seif Abayis Litznoim Nei Rishus Rabim. You could tell the guy, says, 1 second, you have to build a whole wall anyway, because you don't want people from the street to look into your property. So Kamash Malana comes teachers Damalei Rabim. When it comes, he tells him like this. He says, I'm not worried about the street. I'm only worried about you. Rabim, when it comes to the public, they only see me during the day. But at night, it's fine. But you see me during the day and during the night. And it bothers me. I'm not going to be able to sleep with you looking at me. I'm not going to be able to do whatever private things that I would like to do on the roof. Inami. Or else Rabin ki kamina chazali ki asivna le chazali at chazasli ben ki kamina ben ki asivna. Also, there's another problem. Is because the public, they have to be in order for the public to see me, they're down below. So when I'm standing, they can see me. But if I'm sitting or laying down on the roof, they don't see me. But you'll see me even when I'm laying down. So that's going to be problematic. Rabim kimaynu chazali, kilaymaynu lei chazali, at memela nami chazasli. And also, when it comes to the public, they have to actually pay attention to see me because they don't notice. They don't always look up. People don't look up like that. But you're going to see me even without paying attention. So automatically, you're just going to walk outside to see what I'm doing.
So this is the reason. I thought they each built a half a wall already.
Yeah,
So
they're
what
each
is
building
the-
half a wall.
Yeah.
But what the guy is saying, you have to build the whole wall anyway. Once you started building half the wall, why didn't you finish the whole wall? Because there's public people in the public area.
But he answered the angle is they don't really see it.
That's the answer.
Yeah, but otherwise, each half a wall blocks
Right,
the roof guys.
right, right.
With a walk in between, they could see on the. Oh, that was spaces.
People from the floor,
Right.
but.
But it's not the same. It's not the same.
angle.
Right. It's not the same.
When it comes to a roof, do you have to also protect it from people falling, right? Also another mitzvah, right?
Yeah, but to protect from falling doesn't have to do with a wall. That you can put up a fence that's just strong, like some rebar or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. Here we're talking about Hesekriya. We're talking about like a real wall where it's blocking the vision.
I think the older houses, they have flat roofs. They have kind of like the same fence that is used for balcony. Like around.
Yeah, they'll use like a balcony type fence for that. Okay. Amar Mar, the master taught, we're going back to explain. Usually Amar Mar is a brisa. And is this a brisa? It's funny that we have an Amar Mar when it's Abaya.
Said Abaya said above.
Abaya said above. For Abaya, usually we would get a gufa.
I don't see an app for that. You'll need to download one.
Yeah.
Over here, this paragraph, this is teaching from Abaya. So
Yeah, it's a problem. Usually when an Amira is introduced, they don't say Amar Mar. Usually when not introduced, when they go back to analyze an Amira, they usually say Gufa. Amar Mar is usually used for Brisa. Yeah, the master. Anyway, whatever the case is. Okay, you said before that each one has to put up half the roof. Not half the roof, half the fence around the roof, and you overlap a little bit so that they can't see into each other's property. The Gemara says, Pshita. Of course they have to do this, that each one is going to do half. What are you expecting? Does lie? No, it's shricha, it's necessary. The kadam chad minay avad. What's the gimel? V'avadidei. We're talking about that one person started to build. So the tema, maybe the person can tell him, Nemalei, idach, the other guy can say, Shkolas in kabab de skula. Here, I know that I'm supposed to build, and I have already designated the money that I'm going to use to build my wall. Why don't you just take the money that I designated and you build it on your roof anyway? Because you're anyways building a roof. Why don't you just make it complete? And here's the money. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that the person can respond to him. At my time, this. How come you don't want to build a roof? Mishum de misra shisach, because it's going to ruin your wall. Because it's going to be too much weight on the top. You can't just build the second floor, just like that. That's going to weigh down on the lower wall. And Anami, Mr. Leshisai, it's going to ruin my wall. Just because I started to put up doesn't mean that, the more you put up, the weaker the wall's going to get. So therefore, I'm not taking your money. You build the wall on your roof. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Nachman says, the name of Shmuel, Gaga Samach L'Chatzer Chaveirei. If there's a roof that's equal to the courtyard of his friend. That means that they're building this on a mountain, on a hill. So that's coming up. That's a little different here. I have the house was built into the mountain, so this person's roof is this person's courtyard. Yeah.
Oh. So you could almost walk
So-
out on his roof.
So this guy in the courtyard, yeah, he could walk onto this guy's roof, but he's not going to walk onto his roof. But the other guy on the roof is going to look into the courtyard, and we said that the courtyard has a kriya. He looks in because I won't be able to do all the things that he wants to do in the courtyard.
So is just like a lack of privacy. It's
Yeah.
like just-
Yeah, which means that he won't be able to have full usage of his courtyard.
Oh.
But what he likes to do. In those days, the houses were not. They didn't contain all the rooms like we do. We put everything in our house, the bedrooms and the bathrooms and the kitchen and the this. Those days, inside the house was the bedroom. And they did a lot of the things, some of the cooking and the laundry and the things that was outside in the courtyard. So you want to have privacy when you do all that stuff. You don't want to be watched all the time.
Is the Cheskes doing of the roof, the walls, the initial obligation is on who? Is it on the person who has the potential?
Yeah,
to
that's a
see
good
whether-
question.
Because
So-
what you could say, one is doing the Fnei Ibelo Titan Yetsho.
Right.
You could also say the other one is being
Right.
Overlo Sasuro Net.
Right.
So, no way should we be-
Yeah. In the Gemara in the next chapter, there's going to be a machlekes, and there's a mazik and a nizik, someone that's causing damage and someone that's being a victim. Who's obligated to move away to protect that it shouldn't happen? Is it the mazik or is it the nizik? Do you say you shouldn't have done that? Look, you can cause a damage. I think I say you shouldn't have been walking there. You can get to who has the claim against who. So I think the same thing would apply over here. Who's the hezekriya on? You have to stop it or make sure. I think it's on the person that's causing the damage. He's the one he has to make sure that it doesn't cause damage onto someone. You have to block your view to make sure that you don't.
Where's the whole Shmira same right?
That's exactly. You
We're
have to block.
blocking our sight. When
Right.
you say blocking your view, it sounds like the other person.
No. The guy that's looking. That's what it seems. I don't have it's not 100%.
That's what I would.
You see over here, Gaga Samach Lachatzer, Chaveira, Islay Maka Gavaya Dalar Amas. He has to make a fence for Amas. Now, who has to make the fence? I guess both of them. Isalai. Isalai. So, only Abel Ben Gagal Gaglai. But on roofs in general, you don't have to make a fence between two roofs. Now, that doesn't fit with what we said before. Rashi says that because the courtyard is used much more than the roof, and the courtyard for sure has a hezekriya, because the guy is going to go up on his roof, and the guy in the courtyard says, "I never know when you're going to appear on your roof, so I don't know how to protect myself from you looking at me." So. But it seemed like before that there was hezekriya between the roofs.
Yeah, probably also mentioned that he would see as his neighbors going on to the roof, so then he would be able to not look.
The opposite. He never knows when he's going onto the roof. Are you talking about the other way? The guy in the courtyard would see when the neighbor is going on the roof, and the neighbor we're talking about, that the neighbor that goes on the roof would see if the guy in the courtyard is there. But the guy that's on the roof who doesn't know if he's doing his work, he's there the whole time. He doesn't know if the guy appeared on his roof, right? The guy in the courtyard. Rashi points out the Gemara above explained that in the case of an adjoining courtyard and a rooftop, a fence of 4 amas is required because of the disparity between these two areas. Since the courtyard is used regularly while the rooftop is only occasionally, the owner of the courtyard can never predict when his neighbor will ascend to the roof, and thus cannot effectively conceal his private activities, right? Hence, the rooftop owner must direct the fence to ensure that he does not violate his neighbor's rights to privacy. Okay, so here they're saying that it's the rooftop owner that has to put up the fence. However, no fence is required in the case of the 2 adjoining rooftops, since one would notice the ascension of his neighbor and could limit his occasional private activity. So if it's 2 roofs, then he doesn't have to do that. My question is that before, we're talking about 2 roofs on each side of the Rosh Hashanah, we said that he does have to. Oh, he goes on. He says, where, however, 2 rooftops are separated by a public or even private domain, timely detection is impossible. Hence, the construction of 2 partial fences is required as a viral above. So it's different if it's across the street. You won't realize that the person's there. If it's right next to it, then you will realize. You'll be able to. So it's interesting here. We have like 3 categories. Okay. Yeah, you have rooftops, of course, across the street where you need a fence. You have 2 rooftops next to each other where you don't need a fence, and then you have a rooftop in a courtyard where you do need a fence.
You're gonna realize by seeing it.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole? But isn't that the damage? The seeing?
Yeah, the damage is not the seeing. The damage is the limiting of what usage you can get because of seeing.
So the notice is that somebody is up there, but that's not really considered damage. Because
yeah, it's. I'm not going to go swimming, or I'm not going to do the laundry, or I'm not going to do this because there's people there. There's people walking, so I can't use it now.
You would think that this would be factored
That's
into
the damage.
This property is worth less.
Right, exactly. That's another part. That's another possibility, that because you're limiting the usage of it. Then.
Check a quick story, very quick. 40 years ago, au pairs were very popular in this neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
these girls from Sweden, they come over and when you had a lot of little babies to take care of, and you give them a stipend. So we had this open. So this neighborhood was filled with young blonde Swedish girls. All right. So we had an au pair, all right, a second child. All right. All of a sudden, I come home and we had Horvitz's old house. Horvitz's house was originally we lived in there twice before the person before him. So it has its own pool and its own private enclosure in the backyard. Right. So I come home on Shabbos. I walk right in. My wife says, "We have a problem." I said, "What's the problem?" She says, "You have to go outside." I go, "Why?" I said, "Lena's outside." So I go outside, and instead of the backyard, she's in the front lawn taking a suntan. All right. So I come back in. I said, "So what do you want?" She's taking the suntan. She's got a white bikini. I said, I can't do anything about that. She goes, "That's not the problem." She goes, "That's not a bikini." So there was suntanning.
I'm not going to say over the story, but the story.
But I'm saying we had an fenced backyard. Who would have thought at that time you need to fence the front yard? Who would have thought the whole situation would happen anyway?
Okay.
I sent her home. I sent her back to Sweden earlier. I couldn't take. She was chafing all my dishes also. No rooftop.
So we're learning about a rooftop that's next to a courtyard. So you have to put up a fence. The owner of the roof has to put up the fence. But between 2 rooftops, no. Even though the rooftops don't need a wall, but it has to be a mechitza sasar. It has to be 10 tvachim. The Gemara says, 1 second, lamai. Why do you need a 10 tvachim partition? Ila has a kriya. If it's because you don't want people to see from one roof to another, arba arba spinan, then it should be 4 cubits because that's the height of a person, and he would be able to look in. Ila nitvaslav kaganov, and if it's just you see, a fence makes it very uncomfortable, even if it's a low fence, makes it uncomfortable for someone to walk into your property. And what are you doing here? If there's no fence, like in front of my lawn, and no fence there, All the times there's like people with their dogs and the dogs are just running up over there and then people walk across or whatever. And they're not uncomfortable at all. They're like, oh, whatever. So even if I'm watching, hopefully they pick up the. But if there would be even a small, tiny fence, even it would be like a 2-foot fence over there, a little like those white decorative fence, those little things, they would automatically be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So hopefully. So if it's just you want to make them uncomfortable, that they should feel like they're in someone else's property, the Mesipas Balmasagi, then you just have to put up those pegs. Those little pegs would already make them feel uncomfortable that they shouldn't be walking there. And if it's to keep out the small animals, the goats, that's enough if you put up a fence that doesn't allow them to jump through it, with this like a picket fence. So the Gemara says, really, our concern over here, why we need the 10 tvachim is because we don't want people to feel comfortable walking there. We want them to feel like they're a thief. If there was just the pegs, then he can say, Amar mimitsuri kamatsirna. I think this means that he was stretching. Rashi says that it means, where was that? Maybe Rashi doesn't have these words. But what we're saying over here is that, oh yeah, I was just getting my thing. My thing fell in there. I was playing, playing ball with my kids, and the ball went in there, so that's why I went in. But if there's a fence, then you knock on the door and you say, "Can I go in?" That's a different story. But if it's just the mesipas, if it's just the peg, then you'll run in and take it. Okay. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. If the courtyard was higher than his friend's roof, that's not a concern for us. My love, that means that you don't need any fence at all. Even 10 tvachim. Gemara says, "Loi, this is a little interesting because we were talking before when there were 2 roofs, not a courtyard. Now, this doesn't fit perfectly with the way we were learning. How do they reconcile this? Now we're talking about the courtyard. I thought between a courtyard and a roof, you need a wall of 4 amas. Yeah. Surface of the rooftop was lower than the level of the courtyard. Okay. The courtyard owner is not bound to the roof's owner, which means he is not obligated to help to pay the cost of a fence, even though he can gaze onto his neighbor's rooftop.
Says he used it infrequently. Constant.
The reason for this law is as follows. Since a person does not use his roof with regularity, he can schedule the occasional usage for those times that his neighbor does not occupy the courtyard. Hence, since the rooftop owner can avoid being victimized by visual trespass, the courtyard owner need not contribute toward the cost of a fence for amas tall. Okay, that's what we're talking. We're talking about the courtyard owner. Last time we were talking about the roof owner. Now we're talking about the courtyard owner. The owner of the rooftop, however, must unilaterally erect the fence 4 amas high to prevent visual trespass. But although his roof is lower than the neighbor's courtyard, he can nevertheless see his neighbor. Yes, so there's got to be a roof anywhere. So this is like a strange case. We're talking about where the courtyard owner doesn't have to contribute. It says doesn't have to contribute at all. He should have to contribute at least to 10 tvachim. The Gemara says no. He does have to contribute to the 10 tvachim, just like by the 2 rooftops. So too by the courtyard and the rooftop. Yes, at least contribute to that part.
These houses that are like different levels.
Yeah, because it's built on a mountain. It's my let's say there's 2 courtyards. Yeah.
Places where
2 courtyards, one above the other. In other words, it's like It's on levels, like a step, like the Chinese rice field. So Amar Rav Huna tachten baina mikenegdei va'ila v'elyon baina mikenegdei va'ila. So look at what's going on. The guy that has the lower field, the lower courtyard, he builds a wall up to his neighbor's courtyard, and his friend will build a wall from his courtyard and up. Build a nice base, and the guy will build on top. Rav Chisda Amar Elyon Maseyem L'mata baina. Rav Chisda says no, the one on the top has to actually contribute to the bottom one. Tani Kavaseder of Chisda, we have a support for that. We actually have a brisa that says that he actually has to contribute and help to build from the bottom. But if the courtyard is on top, the courtyard doesn't have to build, it doesn't have to protect from Hezekriya into the roof. It's only the roof that has to protect from Hezekriya into the courtyard. Hanu Beitrei. I'll get on to the next page. Hanu Beitrei Davidairi. Here we're talking about, I think it was two brothers. Does it say that it's two brothers? Yeah, Rashi says. One took the house, one took the roof. One took the upper story. One was living upstairs, one was living downstairs. Itbar tatai. Itbar means that it broke. But that's not what's really going on. You have to correct it. Itbas tatai. It started to sink in. So the lower story is now sinking into the ground. That's going to get very uncomfortable when it gets lower and lower. So the lower person says to the upper one, we have to rebuild this. I says, I don't know what you're talking about. For me, it's perfectly fine. I says, I have no problem. So he says, okay, at least I'll break the whole thing down and build it up. He says, I don't have anywhere to live while you're going to do that. I'll get you a hotel room. No, that's a pain. I can't bother living in moving my stuff and living over there. Like Hamitali says, but I can't get in, even get into the doorway. Can't get in. He says, oh, that's not a problem. Well, you're gonna have to lay down, crawl in, like a snake, get inside, and then when you want to leave, you do the same thing. You get out. So the doorway, I guess inside maybe the roof is taller than the doorway. Amar Rav Chama, Bedina Kama Akav, Rav Chama says that actually he can stop him and he can say it's bother for me. When does the lower person have a real claim? That's when the beams of the upper floor are already under 10 tfachim within the lower floor, because then he can say that you're actually in my property. So then he can say that I have the rights to get you out of here. You're my property, but that's not your property. So then he can force him to move out. That's only if they didn't put this in the contract originally, that he can tell him to move out if he has to rebuild. But if they made the stipulation at the beginning that he's going to get rid of him, temporarily till he builds it up, so then he is allowed to do that. If he asked him about well, how much would it be? The height. What's the normal height of a house of the room? Even if they may have this contract that says that if it goes below the normal height, but what is the normal height? Amar Rabbana Kamei de Rava Mishmei de Marzut Shebrei de Rav Nachman. Well, that's a lot there. Kamei de Rava Mishmei de Marzut Shebrei de Rav Nachman. Damar Mishmei de Rav Nachman. Ultimately, it comes back to Rav Nachman. Like we learned, it says, it's talking about if someone hires someone to build them a house, what's the expected height of the roof to get? So what you do is like this. You take the length and the width, and you divide them in half, the house. And you add it together. And that's going to be the height. Like it says by the Beis Hamikdash, the Heichal was 40 amas long, 20 amas wide. So you divide the 40 in half, that's 20. Divide the 20 in half, 10. So it's 20 plus 10 is 30. The height of the roof is 30. Amar lahu Rabba, le'amina lahu le'tislu be'buki sriki b'Rav Nachman. Why are you putting in, how do they translate buki sriki? These empty pitchers in the name of Rav Nachman. Achim Rav Nachman. Hidarianshi, the way people live. The kama, how might the people live? Amar Avuna B'Der V'Shua, Ke'echi Da'ili Yisraisa the Mechus of V'Hadar. You want to be able to get the beams inside and to turn around. Today, that would be to get the wheelchairs or strollers through a doorway. That would be, that's there's like the code would be to be not to get the bathtub into the house. That's what they have to do beforehand, right?
ADA, it says, American with Disabilities.
Oh, ADA, that's what it's called.
So
Okay.
having things sink in, that was common enough that they would stipulate beforehand.
Yeah, apparently that was common, especially because we're learning about the water dripping down the things. It loosens the soil and things would sink. Yeah.
Mexico City is like that. You have like huge structures that are sinking in your building. So they have to walk down to go into certain buildings because it was built. Mexico City was like a big lake.
Maybe that's why. I mean, that's why when they do these excavations, they're digging down, the things are covered because it actually, either because it sinks or because the dust is piling up.
Yeah. We're talking about nowadays that ADA is only if it's a commercial property. Because if your residence, you can do it if you need it. You shouldn't have to. But I mean, it's not a requirement that everyone has bars in their showers or ramps going up to the.
No, but aren't doorways supposed to be a certain size?
Yeah.
Even that, yeah.
But for ADA, they're wider.
Oh, really?
You know that there's a whole discussion. If you're renting on a, and then the tenant that comes asks the owner to make it ADA accessible as a whole.
I know with Airbnb, that doesn't apply because you can either have it because it's your private place. So if the owner did happen to make it that way, they advertise and they get a different business. It's like I don't have to let anyone with a dog in my place that's renting